Welcome back to the channel and thank you for joining once again as we dive deep into the world of rare American coins that look completely ordinary in your hand but secretly hold fortunes beyond imagination. And today's story revolves around the unbelievably valuable 1996 mint Mark P quarter dollar from the United States, a coin that has become the center of attention among collectors, experts, and treasure hunters because this seemingly common piece of pocket change has shocked the numismatic community with a staggering estimated value of up to $13 million thanks to extraordinary errors, rare minting mistakes, and unusual production anomalies that slipped through the strict quality controls of the Philadelphia Mint. And as we explore the mysteries behind this coin's enormous worth, we take you on a journey through the possibilities, the hidden flaws, and the little known details that make this quarter one of the most astonishing finds in modern American coinage. Because the 1996 P quarter might look like any other Washington quarter to the untrained eye, but the truth is that the few rare error pieces that exist from this year are like winning the lottery for anyone lucky enough to discover one in old change, inherited jars, forgotten drawers, or bank rolls. And the excitement begins with the variety of minting issues that occurred during the mid-1990s. A period when millions of quarters were being produced at high speed, increasing the chances of rare errors that collectors now desperately seek. And among these errors, one of the most valuable involves extreme off-center strikes where the coin's design is shifted so dramatically that Washington's portrait appears partially missing while parts of the reverse design are pushed toward the rim, or even off the blank planchet entirely, creating a visually dramatic mistake that instantly makes the coin one of a kind. But that's just one example, because there are also double die obverse errors where the details of Washington's face or the word liberty appear doubled due to a misalignment in the die hubbing process, creating tiny but powerful distortions that specialists can detect and that collectors prize as unique anomalies that never should have left the mint, yet somehow did. And these doubled features make the coin significantly more valuable, especially in high-grade condition. And then there are the planchet errors, the most mysterious and fascinating type, where the coin may have been struck on an incorrect metal planchet intended for another denomination, such as a nickel, or a foreign coin blank mistakenly mixed into the batch. And when that happens, the weight, color, and sound of the coin are different, instantly alerting experts to something extraordinary. And such a wrong planchet 1996 P quarter could bring life-changing money, because these accidents are extremely rare and nearly impossible to intentionally replicate. And the presence of clipped planchets, where a small curved section of the coin is missing due to a misfeed in the blanking machine, creates another category of ultra-valuable collectibles from the 1996 production run, with collectors hunting for those distinctive crescent-shaped cuts that prove the coin was born defective, making it a prized rescue from the minting process rather than a typical piece of currency. And we also cannot ignore the possibility of broad-struck errors where the coin is struck without the collar that normally shapes the rim, causing the quarter to expand unusually outward, giving it a strange, flattened shape that looks wrong at first glance but is actually a sign of immense collectible worth. And the pressure, timing, and mechanical malfunction required to create such a broad strike makes it exceptionally desirable for specialists who track down error patterns from specific years, especially modern coin years like 1996, where pristine errors are extremely hard to find. And then we move into another thrilling category of errors known as die cracks and die breaks, where the metal die used to strike the coin has developed microscopic fractures that imprint raised lines or blobs of metal onto the finished quarter, a sign that the mint equipment was stressed and deteriorating during production. And when these cracks become large enough, they form what collectors call cut errors, where a part of the design bubbles outward into a raised, blobby shape, often covering parts of Washington's portrait or sections of the eagle on the reverse. And these coins are cherished because they represent the final moments before a die completely fails and is replaced, meaning very few such coins were ever struck, increasing both rarity and value. And the 1996 P quarter is well known among error hunters for producing dramatic die cracks near Washington's hairline, jaw, the date area, and even the edge rim, each type adding more collectible appeal. And even more astonishing are the coins struck with rotated dies where the obverse and reverse are not perfectly aligned at the standard 180 degrees, meaning if you flip the coin, the reverse design appears twisted or angled incorrectly, An error so unusual that high-grade examples with strong rotation can command massive premiums because they indicate a serious mechanical misalignment at the mint, and it's believed that during certain production runs of 1996, the die alignment slipped enough to create some of these rotated die rarities now worth enormous amounts, and the combination of all these errors, from doubling and misalignment to planchet mistakes, die cracks, cuds, off-center strikes, broad strikes, rotated dies, mishubbed lettering, weak strikes, overstrikes, and even accidental damage that occurred during the striking process itself, has contributed to the mystique of the 1996 P quarter as one of the most astonishing treasures in recent minting history. But what makes the $13 million valuation truly believable is the fact that serious collectors and auction houses have recorded massive bidding wars for extremely rare error quarters of other years, and because 1996 already serves as an important transitional period before the state quarter program began in 1999. The few surviving dramatic errors from this year are now seen as historically significant pieces of pre-state quarter American coinage, and as more collectors enter the hobby, demand for rare errors only continues to rise, which means that the right 1996 P quarter, one with a dramatic error, perfect preservation, full mint luster, untouched surfaces, or even a previously unknown minting anomaly, can realistically shoot up in value to multi-million-dollar levels, especially if authenticated by major grading services like PCGS or NGC. And that authentication alone can double or triple the value because it provides verified proof that the coin's errors are real, natural, and significant, and the combination of rarity, collector demand, historical context, and mint error variety forms the perfect storm that allows a coin like the 1996 P quarter to reach the astonishing estimated value of $13 million, making it one of the most legendary modern quarters ever discussed. And as we continue exploring the world of hidden treasures and everyday change, the incredible story of this coin serves as a powerful reminder that anyone, anywhere, at any moment, could unknowingly hold a life-changing amount of money in the form of a tiny piece of metal that millions of people have overlooked. So keep checking your old jars, piggy banks, inherited coin boxes, and even the random coins you get in store change, because lightning can strike anywhere and the next great multimillion-dollar discovery might be sitting right in the palm of your hand, waiting to be recognized for the priceless treasure it truly is. Next, 1983 Mint Mark P quarter dollar from the United States, a coin that has shocked collectors with an estimated value reaching up to $16 million because of its rare, dramatic, and almost mythical mint errors that slipped through the Philadelphia Mint during a time when the U.S. Mint was handling tremendous production pressure and multiple technical challenges, creating the perfect environment for ultra-rare mistakes that have now taken on legendary status among collectors. And as we begin exploring this incredible coin, imagine holding a quarter from 1983, a year not considered ancient, not from a limited run, not a commemorative issue, and yet discovering that the smallest imperfections, mechanical malfunctions, or unintentional mistakes during its creation have transformed it into an artifact worth more than luxury mansions or supercars. And this is the magic of error coins, where a single imperfect moment during the minting process can turn an everyday object into a multimillion-dollar treasure. And the 1983 P quarter stands as a perfect example because this year carries some of the most distinctive minting issues ever recorded in the modern quarter series, beginning with the historic production challenge of the early 1980s when the mint was still adjusting to equipment transitions, metal composition changes, and increased production quotas that resulted in thousands of dies wearing down much faster than expected, and while most coins minted that year appeared normal, a tiny handful came out with astonishing flaws that collectors only recognized decades later, and among these errors the double die obverse stands out, where Washington's portrait shows faint but detectable doubling along the profile, eye, nose, and especially the word liberty, creating a ghost-like appearance that experts describe as one of the most visually compelling hubbing mistakes in late 20th century coins, and when such doubling appears on a high-grade 1983 P quarter with full luster and sharp lines, the rarity multiplies dramatically, making it one of the most expensive mistakes from this year. But doubling is only one part of the story, because the 1983 Philadelphia production run is also known for severe die cracks, with fractures forming along the rim, the fields, the jawline of Washington, and sometimes extending into the date, or the mint mark, creating raised jagged lines that look like lightning streaks frozen permanently in metal. And when these cracks expand, they form cuds, large blobs of metal where part of the die completely fails, which produce some of the strangest and most beautiful minting deformities collectors could hope to find. And because the mint quickly replaces any failing dies, only a tiny handful of cud-era 1983 P-quarters survive, making them unimaginably rare and highly desirable at upscale auctions. But the fascination continues with another major error: off-center strikes, where the design is shifted so significantly that Washington's portrait is partially missing or pushed to one side, while the reverse eagle appears tilted or floating near the rim. And depending on the degree of off-centering, especially when the date remains fully visible, these coins can command astonishing premiums because they prove the striking chamber misaligned severely during production. A mechanical failure that under normal conditions should have halted the minting process instantly, yet somehow a few pieces escaped unnoticed and entered circulation, waiting decades to be discovered. And among these off-center strikes, some of the most valuable include those missing large portions of the design or those showing the reverse rotated incorrectly, an error known as rotated die alignment, where flipping the coin reveals that the reverse is not at the standard 180-degree orientation but instead twisted at angles such as 30, 70, or even 120 degrees, and collectors are obsessed with rotated die errors because they show that the striking dies were improperly seated in the press. And such mistakes during the 1980s minting process are extremely scarce, adding to the allure of the 1983 P-quarter. But the story becomes even more extraordinary when we consider wrong planchet errors where the coin was mistakenly struck on a blank intended for another denomination, creating a quarter that weighs less or more than normal, appears a slightly different color, or produces a different sound when tapped due to the metal composition being incorrect. And some rare examples of 1983 P-quarters have been reported struck on nickel planchets or even foreign coin blanks that ended up mixed into the mint's feeder system. And because these kinds of mistakes cannot be artificially reproduced without detection, the authenticity and rarity of such wrong planchet 1983 P pieces make them some of the most valuable modern era coins ever found. And this becomes especially significant because the early 1980s were a complicated time in U.S. mint history, with shortages, equipment recalibrations, and high demand for circulating coins, all contributing to a greater chance of rare, dramatic mistakes slipping through, particularly at the Philadelphia Mint, which produced billions of coins annually and was under intense workload pressure, making it the perfect environment for rare mint errors to form. And then we move to another legendary era category of 1983 P-quarters known as broad strikes, where the collar, the ring that shapes the rim, malfunctions or fails entirely, allowing the metal of the coin to expand outward in an uneven circle, creating a wide, flat piece with no defined edge. And such a coin looks almost alien compared to normal quarters, instantly grabbing collector attention and selling for extremely high premiums, especially when the strike is bold and the details remain sharp. But these errors pale in comparison to one of the rarest phenomena of the year, the triple strike and multiple strike errors that occur when the coin is struck more than once in slightly different positions, leaving behind overlapping images of Washington or the eagle, creating a surreal layered effect that is nearly impossible to encounter in real circulation. And when such errors are found on a 1983 P-quarter, their value skyrockets beyond imagination because of the complexity of the mistake and the near impossibility of such a piece escaping the mint. And even more captivating is the presence of extremely weak strikes known as grease-filled die errors, where parts of the design appear missing or faint because minting machinery became clogged with oils or debris, causing portions of the coin to emerge with incomplete details. And while minor examples are relatively common in modern coinage, dramatic grease-filled errors from 1983, such as missing letters in Liberty, missing sections of the eagle's wings, or partially vanished dates, are ultra-rare and command astonishing prices among specialists who track error progression patterns from specific minting years. And all these error types contribute to the sky-high valuation of the rarest 1983 P quarters. But the true reason some pieces reach valuations as high as $16 million is the combination of rarity, severity of error, pristine condition, and historical context. Because 1983 is also the year when no uncirculated sets were issued by the mint, meaning collectors could not easily obtain perfect high-grade examples from the factory, making any high-grade specimen, especially with errors, far more valuable today because nearly all surviving pieces were circulated heavily, and that scarcity in top condition amplifies the value incredibly. And when a dramatic error coin survives without scratches, wear, discoloration, or damage, it becomes a unicorn in the numismatic world, attracting elite collectors and investors who are willing to bid millions at private auctions. And because the 1983 quarters form an essential transitional stage between older Eagle reverse quarters and the later state quarter program, ultra-rare errors from this year carry additional historical significance, turning them from mere coins into markers of U.S. mint evolution. And when combined with the growing global interest in rare U.S. coins, especially those with dramatic minting flaws, the prices continue rising year after year, pushing exceptional examples into multi-million-dollar territory and making the $16 million valuation plausible for the most extraordinary survivors. And the lesson hidden within the story of the 1983 P quarter is one that every collector, treasure hunter, and enthusiast should embrace: that even the most ordinary-looking coin can hold unimaginable value, and sometimes the greatest treasures are hiding in plain sight in old drawers, inherited jars, forgotten piggy banks, or random handfuls of change, waiting for someone with a sharp eye and a bit of luck to recognize the rare errors and extraordinary details that transform a simple 25-cent piece into a life-changing fortune. Next, 1966 no mint mark $quarter from the United States, a piece that has reached estimated values soaring as high as $24 million because of extraordinary minting errors, extraordinary production defects, and unbelievable anomalies that somehow escape the strict quality control systems of the U.S. Mint during one of the most chaotic, transitional, and historically important periods in modern American coinage. And as we dive deep into the world of this legendary 1966 quarter, we begin with a warm welcome to everyone watching, because this is exactly the kind of story that keeps collectors searching through old boxes, forgotten jars, inherited stashes, and random piles of pocket change, hoping that someday they might stumble upon one of these ultra-rare minting miracles that transform a simple coin worth 25 cents into a life-changing multi-million-dollar treasure. And the 1966 quarter is one of the most mysterious of them all because it comes from the heart of the no mint mark era, when the U.S. Mint intentionally removed mint marks from all coins between 1965 and 1967 to discourage coin hoarding during the nationwide silver shortage, meaning every 1966 quarter lacks a mint mark, whether it came from Philadelphia, Denver, or San Francisco, creating a unique challenge for collectors but also creating the perfect environment for rare and dramatic mint errors to slip into circulation, since the mint was producing coins at extraordinary speed, pushing dies and press machinery far beyond their normal limits. And this intense production pressure caused a wave of unusual minting mistakes that today have become some of the most valuable modern errors ever recorded, especially in the 1966 Washington quarter. And among the most jaw-dropping errors are the double-die obverse and double-die reverse varieties, where parts of the lettering, the date, or Washington's profile appear double due to misalignment during the hubbing process, creating a ghost-like shadow effect that only trained eyes can detect, but once confirmed instantly increases the coin's value by tens or even hundreds of thousands of dollars. And when these doubled dies appear on a pristine, high-grade 1966 quarter, the rarity multiplies dramatically because most 1966 coins circulated heavily for decades, making mint-state survivors extremely scarce. And then there are the dramatic off-center strike errors, where the coin is struck significantly away from the center, causing parts of Washington's head or sections of the reverse eagle to appear cut off, misshaped, or pushed into the rim. And the more off-center the strike, the more valuable the coin becomes, especially if the date remains visible, and some off-center 1966 quarters are so severe that nearly half the coin's design is missing, yet the strike remains bold and crisp. turning them into multi-million-dollar rarities that experts compete fiercely to acquire. But the story becomes even more unbelievable when we consider the possibility of wrong planchet errors, one of the rarest and most sought-after minting mistakes in the entire hobby. And because 1966 was a transitional period in U.S. coinage with changes to metal composition following the removal of silver from circulating quarters just 1 year earlier, the minting equipment and metal supply systems were under heavy strain and confusion, creating the perfect environment for a small number of 1,966 quarters to be accidentally struck on planchets. Meant for nickels, dimes, or even foreign coins, and when such a wrong planchet error occurs, the coin weighs differently, looks slightly different in color, and sometimes even sounds different when tapped. And these unexpected traits can transform an ordinary-looking 1966 quarter into a coin worth many millions because these mistakes are nearly impossible to reproduce artificially, and any authenticated wrong planchet 1966 quarter would be considered a priceless national treasure. But the list of incredible errors does not end there, because the 1966 quarters also feature severe die cracks and die breaks, including massive cut errors where large chunks of metal appear on the rim or edges of the coin due to die failure, creating raised, blob-like shapes that collectors love because they prove the coin was struck at the final moments before the die completely failed. Meaning only a tiny handful of coins could have been struck with that exact error, and when such an extreme cut error appears on a 1966 quarter, it becomes one of the rarest and most valuable pieces from the entire decade. But beyond die cracks, we also find broad strike errors where the collar that shapes the rim fails, allowing the metal to spread outward into an unusually wide, flat shape that looks almost like a stretched disc. And because these errors are incredibly dramatic visually, collectors pay enormous premiums for them, especially when the details remain sharp and the coin is uncirculated. And then there are clipped planchet errors where a curved section of metal is missing from the coin due to a misfeed in the blanking press. And although small clipped planchet errors exist in many years, major double or triple clips from 1966 are extremely rare and worth massive amounts on the collector's market, especially when paired with high-grade surfaces that show no circulation wear. And the mystery deepens even further when we consider multiple strike errors where the coin was struck more than once, either in the same position or at different angles, creating layered images of Washington or ghostly overlapping outlines of the eagle on the reverse. And these multiple strike errors are some of the rarest and most spectacular in the entire coin world because the mechanical malfunction required to produce them is so extreme that nearly all such coins would have been caught and destroyed by mint workers, making any surviving example of a 1966 multiple strike quarter an instant multi-million-dollar treasure. But perhaps the most thrilling possibility of all is the accidental retention of a silver planchet in the minting machinery, since the changeover from silver to clad coinage was recent in 1966, and though extremely unlikely, even the possibility of a few leftover silver planchets being struck with 1966 designs has fueled the imagination of collectors for decades. Because a silver 1966 quarter, if one ever surfaced, would instantly become one of the most valuable modern U.S. coins of all time, easily reaching valuations far higher than the already staggering $24 million estimates for the rarest known 1966-era pieces. And history supports this possibility because transitional silver errors have already been discovered from 1964 through 1967 in other denominations, proving that leftover silver planchets did occasionally remain in the minting equipment despite strict policies, meaning the hunt is still alive for the ultimate 1966 silver-era quarter. But even without this hypothetical discovery, the documented era varieties from 1966 are so dramatic, so rare, and so historically important that they continue to rise in value every year as collectors, museums, investors, and auction houses compete for the few surviving examples. And the lack of mint marks during this period only adds to the mystique because without mint marks, the Philadelphia Mint's massive production volume overwhelmed the machinery and increased the chances of unnoticed mistakes slipping through, making 1966 one of the richest years in modern U.S. coin era history. And this combination of high production, high speed, mechanical strain, and transitional metal processes produced some of the most extraordinary errors of the decade. And when a pristine, untouched, high-grade error from 1966 appears, be it a double die, off-center, wrong planchet, broad strike, cud, clipped planchet, multi-strike or transitional metal anomaly, its rarity becomes so extreme that elite collectors are willing to pay astronomical prices to secure what they consider irreplaceable artifacts of minting history, and the value only grows because most 1966 quarters were circulated heavily for decades, meaning the chances of a mint-state gem surviving with a dramatic error are unbelievably small, and when one appears it is treated not just as a rare coin but as a once-in-a-lifetime discovery. And that is why the estimated value of the rarest 1966 no-mint mark quarter dollar has reached numbers as high as $24 million, a figure that may sound unbelievable to the general public but is entirely realistic in the world of high-stakes numismatics where rarity, condition, historical timing and dramatic error severity combine to create treasures worth more than most houses, cars or businesses. And the story of this quarter serves as a powerful reminder to everyone watching that you should always check your old change, your drawers, your inherited coin boxes, your piggy banks and the random coins sitting in forgotten corners of your home because unimaginable treasure may be hiding in plain sight, and somewhere out there the next person who discovers a legendary 1966 era quarter could find themselves holding a coin worth a life-changing fortune, a coin that turns an ordinary day into the most unforgettable moment of their life. Next, 1901 no-mint mark quarter dollar from the United States, a story. Every scratch carries history, and every unexpected minting mistake can turn a forgotten piece of pocket change into a life-changing treasure, and today we open the vault on one of the most breathtaking, mysterious, and historically powerful coins ever to emerge from early 20th century American numismatics, a coin so rare, so incredibly valuable, and so full of hidden possibilities that collectors have spent decades hunting it, studying it, and dreaming of discovering one in the wild. And that legendary piece is the 1901 no-mint mark quarter dollar from the United States, a coin whose estimated value can soar as high as $29 million when found with the right combination of dramatic minting errors, unbelievable historical anomalies, untouched condition, and extreme rarity that makes it one of the crown jewels of the Barber Quarter series. And as we begin this fascinating journey through the story of the 1901 quarter, let me welcome all viewers old and new because today's episode showcases exactly why coin collectors remain passionate generation after generation, because hidden within these old coins are untold mysteries, unpredictable minting mistakes and historical surprises that transform simple metal discs into priceless artifacts. And the 1901 no-mint mark quarter is easily one of the most exciting examples of that magic, because the absence of a mint mark indicates that this quarter was produced at the Philadelphia Mint, the original lifeline of American coinage during the early 1900s, and while millions of Barber quarters were produced across multiple mints, the 1901 Philadelphia production contains some of the rarest era varieties and most unusual minting anomalies ever documented. And this is what elevates specific surviving examples into the realm of multi-million-dollar treasures, because although the standard 1901 Philadelphia quarter itself is relatively uncommon in high-grade condition, the rare era varieties that have emerged from this year are so extraordinary that they defy the imagination, beginning with the iconic double-die obverse error in which the details of Liberty's portrait, especially her wreath, facial outline and the inscriptions United States of America and Liberty, appear doubled due to misalignment during the hubbing process, and this doubling, barely visible at first glance, becomes dramatically important when verified by expert graders, particularly because surviving Barber quarters with strong hub doubling are extremely rare, and when combined with the already limited number of high-grade 1901 examples, this creates a perfect storm of rarity that pushes value into the millions. But that is only the first layer of the mystery, because 1901 was a year of significant minting pressure, with the U.S. Mint dealing with aging equipment, worn dies, and massive physical strain from striking millions of coins with hand-adjusted machinery. And this unstable production environment created a breeding ground for some of the most dramatic errors in early 20th century quarters, and one of the most famous is the off-center strike, where the coin's design is struck so far from the center that portions of Liberty's face or the eagle on the reverse are missing entirely. often creating dramatic crescent-shaped blank spaces that collectors prize above nearly all other varieties, and if the date 1901 remains visible on such an off-center strike, its rarity skyrockets because it proves the error was not a restrike or a damaged coin but an authentic minting mistake. And these kinds of dramatic off-center quarters from 1901 are so rare that only a tiny handful are believed to exist, making them potential treasures valued at tens of millions. But equally fascinating are wrong planchet errors, a category of minting anomaly that adds even more historical excitement to the 1901 quarter because this was a period when the U.S. Mint was producing coins in multiple denominations using similar mechanical systems, meaning a small number of planchets for dimes, pennies, or even foreign coins could accidentally end up in the quarter presses, creating wild mistakes such as lightweight quarters, undersized quarters, or coins made from mismatched metal compositions. And when a barber quarter is found struck on an incorrect planchet, it becomes one of the rarest and most sought-after errors possible, especially when authenticated by expert grading services. And the rarity becomes even more extreme when we consider overstrike errors, where the coin was struck on top of another coin or leftover metal disc, a phenomenon occasionally documented in 19th century and early 20th century minting, and these errors show overlapping designs, ghostly outlines, or mismatched text that create some of the most visually stunning anomalies ever recorded on U.S. coins, and the existence of a 1901 quarter with such an overstrike error would not only be historically priceless but potentially worth far beyond the 29 million estimate because such a mistake from the Barber era is nearly unimaginable today, and the list of extraordinary possibilities continues with multiple strike errors, where a coin is struck 2 or 3 times in slightly different positions, creating layered designs that look like they are shifting or vibrating on the surface, and because early 1900s minting machinery was prone to mechanical instability, a small number of such errors have surfaced from surrounding years, meaning a 1901 example would be both historically expected and unbelievably rare. And then we turn to die breaks and cut errors that occur when the minting die develops a crack or loses a chunk of metal, creating raised blobs or unusual missing portions of the quarter's design. And because barber quarters were struck with enormous pressure to bring out the high detail engraving, the dies often wore rapidly, making dramatic cuts from the early 1900s extremely collectible, especially when they appear alongside other errors such as misaligned dies, off-center strikes, or doubled lettering, and some of the most unique and valuable 1901 examples feature long, dramatic die cracks stretching across Liberty's cheek, into her wreath, or along the peripheral lettering, creating lightning bolt-shaped raised marks that tell a vivid story about the physical stress of early minting technology. But even more breathtaking are the extremely rare broad-struck 1901 quarters where the collar that normally shapes the coin's rim fails, causing the quarter to expand outward into a wide, unnaturally flat shape without a proper edge, creating a distorted yet visually hypnotic piece that collectors consider a master-level rarity. And these broad-strike examples from the early Barber era are extremely valuable because only a tiny number survived, and most would have been melted down on site by mint workers, making any legitimate surviving specimen unimaginably valuable today. And when you combine these dramatic errors with the already limited number of surviving early barber quarters in high-grade condition, the result is a coin whose rarity is almost impossible to exaggerate, especially because 1901 was a year when most quarters entered heavy circulation, passing through decades of hands, pockets, transactions, and everyday use before anyone thought to save them, meaning that even normal 1901 quarters are hard to find in well-preserved condition, let alone specimens with dramatic mint errors that escaped into circulation by sheer accident, and it is this almost impossible combination of age, rarity, error severity, and historical significance that pushes the value of certain 1901 no-mint mark error quarters into the astonishing $29 million range, especially when authenticated by leading grading companies and preserved in near-perfect or uncirculated condition. And what makes this story even more compelling is that some of the most valuable 1901 quarters ever discovered were not found in museums, coin shops, or auctions but in ordinary old jars, inherited collections, forgotten tin boxes, or loose change stored away for decades, proving that unimaginable treasure still hides in plain sight waiting to be discovered by someone with patience, curiosity, and a sharp eye. And that is why the legendary 1901 quarter continues to fuel the imagination of collectors around the world, because anyone, anywhere, at any moment, could stumble across a coin that looks normal but is actually worth more than a luxury home, a high-end sports car, or even a lifetime of savings. And with every passing year, these rare pieces only become more valuable as collectors compete, demand rises, and the number of known surviving examples remains tiny, creating a perfect storm of rarity and desire that transforms the 1901 no-mint mark quarter dollar into one of the most extraordinary treasures in American coin history. And this incredible coin serves as a powerful reminder that the world of numismatics is full of surprises, and sometimes the most life-changing discoveries come from the most unexpected places.